The message came while I was fixing my lipstick in the reflection of my office window, a corner suite on the 32nd floor overlooking downtown Chicago. The city shimmered below me, all noise and motion, yet somehow I never felt more still. My phone buzzed again, lighting up with the words that froze my hand midair. Dad's anniversary event tomorrow night. It's more of a business thing, not really for someone like you.
Someone like me.
I read it twice, then once more, as if the phrasing might soften with repetition. It didn't. The words were clean, polite, almost professional, like they'd been rehearsed. No malice, just exclusion, wrapped in courtesy. I set my phone down on the glass desk, the same way you might set down something fragile you didn't want to break, or maybe didn't care to hold anymore. Outside, traffic pulsed like veins of light. Inside, silence pressed against my ribs. I smoothed the silk sleeve of my blouse, a soft ivory that caught the glow of the city lights, and forced a smile that no one could see. My assistant's laughter echoed faintly down the hall. Someone in marketing was celebrating a deal. My world was spinning forward, faster than I ever thought it would. And yet, just one text from my family could pull me back into that old gravity. The one that said I'd never be enough, never belong, never fit into their polished circle of business events. I picked up my phone again. For a moment, I hovered over the reply button. Then I locked the screen. They didn't need to know I owned the building they'd be celebrating in. I was 22 the last time I attended one of my father's company anniversaries. Back then, I was still Emily Carter, the dreamer daughter, tolerated like a delicate flaw in an otherwise perfect family portrait. My father's firm, Carter and Wells Financial, hosted its annual gala at the Ritz, and I showed up in a thrifted dress with trembling confidence and a portfolio tucked under my arm, sketches for a marketing campaign I'd spent months perfecting. "Dad," I'd said, breathless from the elevator ride, "I think I can help you modernize your brand." He didn't even look up. He just adjusted his tie, glanced at my outfit, and sighed. "Emily, this isn't one of your art shows. This is business." That word again. Business. As if creativity and vision weren't part of it. My stepmother, Veronica, gave me a tight smile, the kind that said don't make a scene. My brother, Jason, whispered, "Maybe next time, Emmy." They were all so composed, so careful. I stood there with my heart in my hands, realizing I'd never been invited to participate, only to applaud. Later that night, I slipped out to the balcony, my dress snagged on the railing, mascara smudged from trying not to cry. My grandmother, the only one who ever truly saw me, followed. She pressed something into my palm, her old silver bracelet, engraved with 3 words, "Make your own way." "Sweetheart," she said softly, "they built their world on walls. You were born to build doors." That was the last time I let anyone in that family tell me where I did or didn't belong. A week later, I packed my life into 2 suitcases and moved to Chicago with a half-paid apartment lease, a few saved paychecks, and a heart full of rebellion. My father called once, said I was being dramatic. Jason texted, "Come home when you're ready to be serious." But for the first time, I was serious, just not about them. I wore that silver bracelet every day that year. Some nights, I'd twist it around my wrist while eating instant noodles, whispering her words under my breath. "Make your own way." I didn't know how yet, only that I would. Chicago didn't welcome me kindly. It was cold, not just the weather, but the kind of chill that seeps into your bones when you realize no one knows your name, and no one would notice if you vanished. I worked 2 jobs, mornings at a coffee shop, evenings cleaning offices that gleamed with the kind of success I could only imagine. Every night, I'd ride the L train home, exhausted but wired, sketching ideas in a worn notebook. Logos, taglines, full ad campaigns for companies that didn't even know I existed. I didn't have connections, but I had vision and a stubborn refusal to quit. One morning, I spilled coffee on a woman's scarf, a silk Hermes scarf that probably cost more than my rent. I expected her to explode, but instead she laughed, dabbed the stain with a napkin, and said, "Well, at least it smells like ambition." Her name was Margaret Hayes, CEO of a boutique marketing firm downtown. She saw my sketches scattered on the counter while I stammered apologies. Instead of walking out, she flipped through them, brow raised. "You did these?" That afternoon, she offered me an internship. Unpaid at first, but it was a door. Under Margaret's mentorship, I learned everything my father's firm never taught me. How storytelling could move money, how emotion drove markets, and how women could lead with grace and grit. I worked late, listened harder, and earned every inch of respect I got. The nights were still long. Ramen, takeout, and the sound of city sirens echoing against the glass. But there were victories, too. My first paid campaign, a client who cried because my design felt like her. I started building a small network of women like me, creatives, freelancers, outsiders who refused to stay that way. When Margaret retired 5 years later, she called me into her office. "Emily," she said, "you've got the kind of fire that can't be contained in someone else's company. Start your own." She invested in my dream with one condition, that I promised to hire women who had been told no too many times.
So I did.
Yem Creative Studio was born in a shared workspace with flickering lights and secondhand chairs. We pitched hard, we failed harder, and then one campaign went viral. A small cosmetics brand became a national name overnight. Investors came knocking. Clients followed. I never bragged. On social media, I kept my posts vague: coffee cups, sunsets, city views. My family still assumed I was doing freelance art. I let them, because success, I learned, tastes sweeter when it's quiet. When the world doubts you, and you prove them wrong, not with noise, but with results. And all the while, the silver bracelet stayed on my wrist, a soft reminder of the woman who believed in me before anyone else did. The day of my father's anniversary arrived like a storm I'd already seen coming. I told myself I wasn't going. I told myself I was over it. But life has a strange sense of humor, and irony is its favorite punchline. That morning, my operations manager rushed into my office, waving a clipboard. "Emily, final confirmations for tonight's corporate booking at the Marlowe Ballroom. Carter and Wells Financial." I froze. The Marlowe Ballroom was mine. I had bought it 2 years earlier, quietly, as part of a real estate expansion for my firm. We'd redesigned the venue, turned it into one of Chicago's most sought-after luxury event spaces. And now, my family was hosting their precious business event in my building. For a long minute, I just stared at the booking sheet. My assistant looked confused. "Do you want to oversee it personally?" I smiled, slow and deliberate.
Yes.
"I think I'll make an appearance." By evening, the ballroom glittered under chandeliers I had personally chosen, all crystal and light. Guests in tailored suits mingled beneath my company's subtle branding, embossed into the gold-trimmed menus and etched on the marble bar. When I stepped inside, the air shifted. Heads turned. I'd chosen a sleek black dress, timeless, understated, commanding. A few executives from other firms nodded in recognition, whispering my name. Then I saw them, my father at the center of the room, Veronica at his side, Jason laughing too loudly near the stage. Their laughter faltered when they noticed me. "Emily." My father's brows furrowed. "What are you doing here?" I smiled. "Just checking on my venue. Everything looks lovely." His expression flickered. "You're what?" "The Marlowe," I said softly. "It's part of EM Creative Holdings now. We handle all event management and branding." I paused, savoring the moment. "You didn't know?" Veronica's wine glass wobbled slightly. Jason blinked like he hadn't heard right. "I guess our communication's been limited," I added lightly, turning to the crowd. "I just wanted to thank you all for choosing this space. It's always a pleasure hosting successful partnerships." You could hear the collective inhale, realization rippling through the room. A few guests clapped awkwardly, unsure if this was a joke or a revelation. My father's voice was low, almost disbelieving. "You own this place?" "Yes," I said simply. Among other things, there was no arrogance in my tone, just truth, finally spoken out loud. Silence fell between us. The same silence that once followed every dismissal, every time they told me I wasn't their kind of success. Jason tried to recover with a grin.
Wow, Em.
That's impressive. You should have told us. I met his eyes. You never asked. Then, for the first time, I looked directly at my father. You said this event wasn't for someone like me. My voice was calm, steady. But here you all are, celebrating in a space I built. Something in his face cracked. Pride, shame, maybe both. Veronica's gaze darted to the floor. A few guests quietly excused themselves. The moment stretched, suspended in the glittering air. I could have walked away right then, but instead, I reached for the bracelet around my wrist, my grandmother's words echoing softly in my head. Make your own way. I turned toward the stage. Enjoy the evening, I said, my voice carrying across the room. After all, this is a business event, and business is exactly what I do. As I walked away, I felt every eye follow me, not out of pity this time, but respect. The kind that comes when people realize they underestimated the wrong woman. The days following the event were strangely quiet. No calls, no messages. Just silence, thick and heavy, like the pause between thunder and lightning. Then, one morning, an email arrived from my father's assistant, requesting a private meeting to discuss potential collaboration. I almost laughed. Collaboration. Still, I agreed. Some part of me wanted closure, not revenge, just truth in daylight. The meeting took place at the Carter and Wells headquarters, a glass fortress I hadn't entered in almost a decade. As I stepped through the revolving doors, the marble floors echoed beneath my heels. The same space that once made me feel small now seemed smaller. My father stood by his office window when I walked in. Jason sat at the table, flipping nervously through a file. Veronica smiled politely, but kept her distance. Emily, my father said, his tone measured. You've done well for yourself. I have, I replied evenly. He cleared his throat. Carter and Wells is expanding into brand development. We'd like to discuss a partnership with EM Creative. Your company has visibility we could benefit from. For a moment, I just studied him. The man who once told me I'd never understand business, now standing in front of me, needing mine. I'm open to discussion, I said finally. But there would be conditions. Jason looked up. Conditions? Yes. I met his gaze. For starters, transparency. No more pretending I don't exist. If we work together, my name goes on the partnership, publicly. Veronica shifted uneasily. Of course, she murmured. And second, I continued, I want diversity initiatives in your firm. Real ones. Internships for women, scholarships, creative hires. For every daughter who was told she wasn't the right fit. My father frowned. That's not exactly. It's non-negotiable. My tone was calm, but the steel underneath it was unmistakable. You've built your empire on exclusion, Dad. I'm offering you a chance to evolve, not to save you. Jason let out a low whistle. You've changed. No, I said softly. I've grown. Silence filled the room again, the kind that forces people to confront themselves. My father's jaw tightened, then slowly relaxed. All right, he said at last. We'll review your proposal. I nodded. Good. And one more thing. They all looked at me. I'll only move forward if this partnership includes one clause, that EM Creative retains full creative control. I won't be micromanaged or silenced. My father hesitated, then extended his hand. Deal. I shook it, but this time, the power wasn't his to give, it was mine to allow. As I turned to leave, Veronica spoke softly. Emily, you really have made your own way. I paused in the doorway, the light from the window catching my bracelet. That's what I was taught, I said and smiled. Outside, the autumn wind carried the faint hum of the city, alive, restless, infinite. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was walking away from something. I was walking towards something entirely my own. 6 months later, I stood at the edge of a different kind of celebration, not my father's, not theirs. Mine. EM Creative had just been named one of the top women-led firms in the Midwest. The event was hosted at the same Marlowe ballroom, my ballroom, but this time, It felt warmer, lighter. The walls seemed to hum with energy that wasn't about wealth or power, but purpose. I watched my team laugh by the bar. Young women from everywhere, each of them someone who had once been told no. One of them had been a single mom, another an art school dropout like me. And now they were strategists, designers, directors, brilliant and fearless. My father came that evening. He arrived quietly, no entourage, no fanfare. Just him. He looked older, softer somehow. We stood side by side near the stage, watching the presentation screen flash our logo across the walls. "You've done something remarkable here," he said finally. I smiled. "Thank you." He hesitated. "I didn't understand it back then, what you were trying to build." "I know," I said gently. "But you didn't have to. It was mine to understand." He nodded, his gaze flicking to my wrist. "Your grandmother would have been proud." That caught me off guard. For a moment, I had to look away, swallowing the lump in my throat. The bracelet still glimmered under the light, a small circle of silver, older than everything around it. Later, as the music faded and guests began to leave, I found myself alone by the window. The city stretched below me, the same view from my office, but somehow it looked different tonight.
Softer.
I thought about every version of me that had existed. The girl on the balcony in a thrifted dress, the barista sketching between coffee orders, the woman building an empire in silence. All of them were still here, stitched together by grit and grace. I touched the bracelet one last time, hearing my grandmother's voice as clearly as the first night she said it. "Make your own way." A photographer called my name for one last picture. I turned, smiled. Not the polite kind I used to wear, but the real one. And as the camera clicked, I whispered under my breath, for the little girl I used to be, and for every woman who'd been told she didn't belong. Turns out, the event wasn't for someone like me because I was meant to host my own. Bottom of form.